to We're Not Wizards. We are the best. And also, we're not wizards. Enjoy the show. Bye.
Hello, it's me. Yeah, I know. I usually do the Welcome to We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard and I'll be your host for February. But this one's a bit special because way back in the 13th of February 2016, there was a podcast that went out into the ether called We're Not Wizards. It was in a different format at the time, but in the last 7 years, we have had hundreds of people guest on the show. We've talked about lots and lots of games, and I've had an awful lot of fun. So it made sense to get back one of the first guests that we had on the show when we got started, and hear a talk about his new game Expeditions is rather wonderful, rather fantastic, Mr. Jamey Stegmaier. But two more things. The first thing is to say thank you to everybody who has listened, who old and new, not as in your age, but when you started. People have stuck by us, people that have found us, people that have stood by us, people that have helped us, people that have let other people aware that we even exist. We just want to say thank you very, very much for your ongoing and continued support. And secondly, remember, we're many things, but we're not wizards. And now, on with the show. First thing I've got to ask, okay? First question, can you sing?
I am a terrible singer.
I'm punching the air because I was terrified. I was terrified you're going to be one of these triple threat people, and it's like I can't sing, no. And then start tap dancing.
So is that the big three? Game design, dancing, and singing.
Tap dancing and singing. It's like the ultimate kind of triple threat. Successful crowdfunding, marketing. It doesn't mean anything at all. But if you came on, and you just came on and you just say, "Out of the flames of fire, I'm Jamey Stegmaier. I have a certain visions, so that's why I'm bringing Expeditions in July." And you could have done
like
it.
You might be the triple threat over here.
No, because I don't do board game design, so.
Okay, just the double threat. So I can't dance either, so I'm really just barely a threat at all.
You're just. Do you know they say don't talk to your heroes because you just like the scales kind of fall away, and it's like because that would have been annoying, just kind of like going, what, you can sing and dance and design board games as well. So
no.
How are you doing anyway? You well? Are you good? Is everything good at Stonemaier Towers?
Yeah, things are going pretty well. I think the world isn't going well lately, but my life is good. I am very fortunate. I have a cat off screen here who desperately wants his dinner.
What's the cat? Is that what you're like? I'm limited to time because if I leave it over a certain amount of time, literally the cat's going to launch itself.
You might see that. He just drags me off camera here. Yeah.
Jamey Stegmaier, kind of R.I.P. kind of.
He's very food motivated. Yeah.
Is that why you've not done a game based around kind of? Were you going to do a game based around cats? I mean, has Frank West stolen that thunder? Yeah. I mean, because I think Frankie's done that. I think there's nobody else can do kind of like a board game about cats now, because anybody will be going, "Oh, you're copying West then." That's what you're kind of doing.
It doesn't get better than Isle of Cats. I love Isle of Cats. I don't even know does Frank even have cats? He never talks about cats. So I don't even know if he actually has any cats.
Is he like? Is this how good he is at marketing? Is the fact that he picked a niche subject that he's not actually interested in? It's kind of like me in board games. It's like I'm not really interested in board games. I'm just interested in people, which means that I'm kind of interested in actually kind kind of speaking to folk as well. Which
Yeah,
is
it's like me and wine too. I designed a game about winemaking that's done quite well, but I don't really drink wine.
So
I like
don't
a
drink
cider.
wine, doesn't sing, doesn't dance,
Yeah.
designs board games.
Yeah. Why am I even on this podcast?
I've just got to ask these questions. Yeah. The other question that I've got, right? The other question that I've got is, do you have multiple colors of that orange T-shirt? Do you have multiple versions of it, or are you kind of like, who is it they said? Your man Albert Einstein, who literally had the same outfit. I wasn't going to say like Jeff Goldblum in The Fly, because that takes us down a completely different kind of expedition, you could say. But do you have an entire rainbow selection of the Stonemaier T-shirts, or do you just have like 5 copies of the orange one?
I essentially just have 5 copies of the orange one, but oddly enough, like every time that we made it, at least all the shirts that I have, they're from different. We went through a few different companies and a few different materials, and so this one's a little more peachy, and one's like bright orange, and one is slightly less orange. So they're all very slightly different colors of orange, and then I have a gray one too.
And it's close to the orange of the Stonemaier orange. I take it you've got the Pantone for that kind of orange. And you're currently wondering, why are we talking about T-shirts and not talking about kind of expeditions?
No.
In all seriousness, here I go, try to be like, proper and stuff like that. Has there been, the Scythe itself had a couple of expansions, your Invaders from Afar and the Rise of Fenrir. Obviously I'm telling you the games that you've made and released, and you're like, yeah, dummy. I made those games. I got them out there. How long was it gesticulating in your mind about saying, like, actually let's, rather than just expand? Because I think you could continue to expand the Scythe kind of game and people would be like, yeah, give me some. It's like lasagna. You just put another bit of lasagna on top and you get more lasagna. But I've got you thinking about that. You can't cut a lasagna. You can't cut a lasagna in half and not have half a lasagna. You still have a lasagna. It's just without cheese on top. But when was it you moved around from, right, okay, we've got to, I'm going to stop thinking about just adding on extra bits, whistles and bells to Scythe, and actually think about kind of stepping forward with the next phase in the kind of the Scythe journey? When did that kind of happen?
Well, it's kind of 2 answers, because one was I decided at a certain point that we were done making new stuff for Scythe. I didn't want it to overstay its welcome.
Yes.
And people still, we still make it. We still make all the expansions. We still make all the accessories. But I kind of compared it in my head to what I hoped would be, what I hope is a good TV show. There are those TV shows that go on too long, and then there's those shows that end right at the right time, and you miss them, but you miss them in a good way. And so I wanted that to be the case with Scythe. But I found that a lot of people either kept requesting more Scythe stuff, or they requested something else in the world. And I kind of got to the heart of that over time, because people would ask this and I'd be like, we're not making more Scythe stuff. Would you want more stuff in this world? And enough people said yes that eventually I was like, I miss this world. I want to return to it. I want to do something in this world that makes sense thematically, that is a sequel to the original game, but is very much its own game with whatever the next step up is in this world is.
Yeah, because it's always been very evocative as a game. And I think it also it very strongly kind of stamped its identity in the board game world. I think if anyone else tried the kind of as soon as somebody kind of brought in kind of anything to do with kind of mechs and kind of like that kind of war kind of period kind of thing, folk were instantly going, it's a bit scythy kind of thing. And I always found, and I've not spoken about this to you personally, but I'm going to wag my finger and say that Scythe was never a war game, Mr. Stegmaier.
You're right.
It was never.
You are right.
It was always a resource management. Now I've never been catfished in my life, Mr. Stegmaier.
The box is a little deceptive inside. And I think we were a little bit more careful with this with Expedition. So there's you can see the box here. There's there are things happening on the box. There are people walking forward. There are some mechs. There's some meteorites. But there's no combat. And in Scythe, there are very few illustrations of combat inside, but one of them just happens to be on the box, even though it isn't a combat game. Yeah. So of all the illustrations we should have picked for the box, that probably wasn't the best one to choose for.
Yeah, but then I don't think you would have had. I think people have. It's kind of like I've seen people defending it, going, "So it's not a combat game," and somebody reaching over and just listen, Mum. It's a damn good resource management game with multiple tracks on how to win. What are you talking about? Just because you haven't gathered up the popularity track enough, and triggered the end conditions, you need to be quiet. But how difficult was it to go down the route then of deciding which route you were going to take with like expeditions? How many different versions and how many notepads have you got with the different versions of expeditions on there when you were like going, this sounds like a good idea, but what am I going to do with it? How am I going to, which way am I going to design it?
It was one of the hardest games that I've ever had to design, which I thought was unexpected. Like when I decided to design it, I talked to Jakob about it, and Jakob was excited. This was early 2020. He was excited. He told me what the story was. He told me what the theme is, what he wanted it to be. I was on board for that. This idea of going on an expedition to Siberia to investigate some mysterious stuff that was happening. That was very clear. And so I thought, okay, I've got this. Like, I know Scythe. I know this world. Give me a few months and I'll have this ready.
Yeah.
And probably almost a dozen versions of the game later, where I completely redesigned it from scratch because I just could not get it. I couldn't. I just had a lot of stumbling blocks. I think sometimes I latched onto a mechanism that just wasn't right for the game, or I was trying to make it too similar to Scythe or too different from Scythe, and it was hard. It was much harder than I expected.
Yeah. And I guess you would have had, at the end of the day, you would have had this thing at the back that these people are potentially expecting more Scythe, and if I give them kind of something completely different. I'll give you an example. Gloomhaven, and then the city building game that Isaac did.
The Founders of Gloomhaven. Yeah.
Founders of Gloomhaven, which everyone went, Gloomhaven, and then Founders of Gloomhaven came out and went, no, I don't want that. I want this, and I think everyone was surprised. It was one of these things where it just goes to show you couldn't take a successful theme from an IP and put it on a different game and have people go, yay, that was amazing. So eventually the next thing was like, it's like, and Isaac's going to kill me if he sees me. It's okay because I know Ross, the crowdfunding manager. I'm going to speak to him. So between the two of them, I think I might be able to take Isaac on, but probably Ross would pummel me into the ground. But I think it was like, Founders was like, they're kind of like, almost like their Caravan of Courage Ewok movie in their Star Wars universe. It's kind of like, we know it exists, and some people really, really like it and they're nostalgic from it, but we don't usually kind of talk about it. But in terms of expeditions, you cover a lot of, and you do a series like on mechanics. Which is, this is my favourite mechanic, and if you haven't seen it or seen it, I'm advising you go and watch it because it's really, or pay attention to it, it's really, really interesting. But at that same time, were you kind of saying, right, I like this mechanic, I'd like to include that, and was that the kind of where the struggle was deciding which mechanic to kind of bring into it?
Yeah. That was where, I wanted to capture. Like, I made a list at the beginning. I made a list of what are my favorite things about Scythe, and what are the favorite things that people often say are their favorite things about Scythe. And I had a choice where I could take those exact mechanisms. I could have taken like one of those mechanisms exactly and brought it over and then changed some things around it.
Yeah.
But it ended up being helpful in the design because it seemed like the design often took me other places. And whenever I would often then go back and kind of remind myself, oh, these are the favorite elements. These are the big hits. How can I make new mechanisms in this new game feel like those things in this original game? That was the challenge, but it was ultimately, I think, helpful for creating the end result. Yeah.
Did you feel pressure to make a smaller game? Was there a part of you at some point you're like, this box is going to be as big as Scythe, and did you put constraints on the design to say, actually, it's still going to be a big box, but we need to hit this so it's not Because size a meaty box, and once you get all the expansions in there, it's a meaty box. In fact, it's such a meaty box that you kind of sell a
bigger box,
a bigger meaty box. To put it's like a pie box, because you open the lid and it's just lots of meat. Not really, but were you on? Did you kind of rein yourself in and say, I'm trying not to pack this as full of stuff that we have kind of like inside?
Not really. No, I mean, I just wanted to make the best game possible. I did want to make it. I say maybe affordable isn't the right word, but I wanted to offer value for the price that we charge. I always want to do that.
Yeah.
And in the end, like I wanted it to be a square box so it's not, you can see it right here on camera. It's not a square box. I wanted it to be a square box, but I also wanted really big mechs in it for a mechanical reason and just because big mechs are awesome. And Jakob was excited about that too. So they didn't fit in the square box. So late in the process, we had to make the box rectangular so they would actually fit.
And the reason for card driven, obviously one of the recent games that you've done is Red Rising, which was pretty much a card game. So were you kind of, when you were developing Red Rising, were you kind of looking at, was Expeditions kind of running alongside that to see kind of what was working with kind of Red Rising and what you could have brought in slightly differently?
I don't know if Red Rising directly had an impact on it. But I do recall, I think back in 2020, maybe even a little bit earlier when I was starting to think about the idea, I think I put a poll up on the Scythe Facebook group where I said something to the effect of like, what would you most want me to make? If I were to revisit the 1920 plus world, what would you want me to make? And I think some of the options that I gave were like a dice version of Scythe.
Yeah.
A 2-player version of Scythe, or a 2-player game set in the 1920 plus world, and I said a deck building version of Scythe in the 1920 plus world.
Yeah.
And that version was the top pick by far. That was what people were excited about. So I was like, okay, cool. I've never designed a deck building game. I'll give this a shot. I'll design a deck building game. And then I found out that designing a deck building game is much harder than it looks. And so I ended up going with kind of the Concordia style deck building where you're not really shuffling the deck. There's no randomization, but it's just more hand management. But yeah, I tried with deck building and I could not get it to work.
It's just it's one of these. It's like it makes me appreciate all the deck builders that are kind of out there. And then because I mean, you've got kind of like Ashes Reborn is one of my Ashes Rise of the Phoenix Born is one of my favorite games. Ashes Reborn obviously jiggled around with that formula and kind of in my opinion kind of improved it.
Yeah. And
there's kind of like, you've got your pre-made decks of like anywhere between 25 to 40 cards. And then people say, oh, you can make your own decks. And I'm just like, there's no danger. I'm going to go and try to make my own cards. But I don't know if you've been playing Marvel Snap at all.
I did. Yeah, I got addicted to it for like 3 hours and then I made myself stop. Yeah.
It seems to be doing, in terms of deck building, it goes to show that the meta in deck building kind of can find itself, because I'm starting to see kind of like, I can see when somebody's playing a certain couple, because I do play it too much, but I can see within a couple of cards kind of which deck that particular person's kind of going for. So it's kind of interesting. So I completely, when somebody says I'm building a deck building game, I'm like, well, you better get the coffee in and you better get the notepads and pencils in, because you're going to be doing a lot of writing and a lot of rubbing out at the same time. Give me the... Okay. For somebody that's hearing about Expeditions for the first time, which means that they've never heard of you and they've never paid attention to anything that you're doing just now, and they're finding out stuff through this podcast, which is very, very rare. But what's the kind
great too. Welcome if you were.
Hello. I mean, this has been.
Yeah.
I mean, I was actually going to say this is like the 13th, and it's the 15th today. But the 13th was the 13th of February 2016. That was the day that we released the first podcast episode ever.
Wow, that's incredible.
I know. If I'd done shoplifting, I would have been out in 5. So there you go. But as far as Expeditions go, do you want to give us kind of the rundown of what kind of game it is and what people can expect when they play it?
Yeah. I'd be happy to. So Expeditions is a standalone sequel to a game called Scythe that you really don't need to know anything about if you don't know anything about Scythe. That's okay. In Expeditions, a meteorite has crashed in northern Siberia in an alternate history, and there's an expedition that goes to check it out, and they don't return. And another expedition goes and checks it out, and they don't return. And so at this point, the main characters of the game, you represent one of those characters, and your animal companion, you decide to go check it out yourself. And to protect yourself, you bring a mech. You are transported and controlling a mech. And so you head out to this uncharted land, and the core things that you're doing in the game are moving around a tile-based map onto tiles that are revealed as you move. And you're gathering resources from those tiles, and you're also gathering cards that are located in between some of the tiles. So you show up at a location and you find an item there, or a meteorite, or you find a quest that you pick up, and there are different things that you do with those cards. I mentioned Concordia earlier. It's a game where you are gathering these cards together, and oftentimes you're playing a card on your hand, and that card can be returned to your hand later on when you decide you're ready to return all cards to your hand. You're also along the way, you are kind of building up your engine, you're improving your mech, you're adding more workers, you're adding more cards, and ultimately you're trying to achieve glory and gain the most wealth throughout this adventure.
Yeah. Are you excited about doing the marketing for this? Because
the marketing,
because you're one of the few. Now you can understand. I spoke to like about 450 people. My word, these poor people. And I would say a good 443 of them, when you come to talk on the subject of kind of getting involved in marketing and marketing your own game, they come up with the same thing, which is, look, design, give me games, I can design them all day. Marketing, apart from Frank West and his invisible cats, marketing, they're like, I can't do this. But you're one of these people, you seem to revel in the marketing side of things. You seem to really enjoy kind of, you release your regular newsletters, you have your items, your articles on your blog, which are they're kind of joyously a mixture between kind of game design and some very, very kind of personal things, like, your kind of your adoption and losing your father recently. I was just like, that's kind of like, there's a very human side to that.
Yeah.
But are you looking forward? Are you kind of like, because does it excite you as much to kind of get the word out there and have people speaking to it as it does kind of designing the game at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, whether I'm the designer of a game, I am in this case, but not always for the games that we publish, I get really excited about. I don't really think about marketing as much as I do as about revealing information, like just sharing the information about the game. And I get really excited about that because we put a lot of work into our games. We don't publish many games every year.
Yeah.
One, maybe two, sometimes maybe three. I don't think maybe we've gotten close to 3 in a year.
Yeah.
But I like to share the art, the mechanisms, all the, the rule book. I've been making videos about Expeditions, sharing like the content that we have in the game and what the game's all about. And I am very fortunate that I'm not just throwing it out there in the void, that people are responding to this content, and I love talking about it. So I very much look forward to it.
Is it nice to be in the situation where there's that genuine level of excitement? Because you're kind of like, it must be almost like, it must be almost like, here's the next kind of Marvel film, or here's the next kind of thing. I'm not obviously, I know that sounds awful. Yeah. It's like, okay, let's cuddle Jamey Stegmaier. But at the same time, you've kind of got the audience there already, and people are kind of wondering kind of what you're doing next. So you're kind of building on that. So is it nice to kind of go back and see kind of familiar names and familiar faces kind of like in the Facebook groups and in the blogs and in the lives that you do, and seeing, oh, this is kind of cool. I'm not having to kind of start from the very, very beginning. I've got like a kind of a border level kind of there.
That is nice. Yeah, I think this is the first time that I've had that happen with a game where I wasn't... most of the time when I release a new game, I am sharing it with our audience, but that audience comes from many different places. Like they might be Wingspan fans, they might be Scythe fans, and I'm not trying to sell them really, but I'm saying, here's our new game, and here's how it's a little bit like Wingspan, or here's the thing that's similar to Scythe. But in this case, I already know that there are a lot of people out there that like Scythe. Again, I'm not trying to convince them, but it's nice to know that they're already there, and I have a thing that they might also like because it's in the same world.
Yeah. And you don't seem to be afraid of being a sales guy as well, if you know what I mean. Again, as there are a lot of people that are kind of like, I see them talk about the product, but you kind of, you've kind of got this kind of, I'm quite happy just to go out there and say, right, have a look at this, take a look at this, check out this video, can I do that? And is this something that you find quite comfortable and kind of natural? Is it just like, why aren't other people doing this? Are you just finding it quite easy to kind of do that as part of your kind of general personality?
I think to a certain extent, yeah. I think it helps that I'm genuinely not trying to sell anyone on it, which helps. I mean, maybe that's what some of the better salesmen do. They're not trying to convince you to buy it. I'm just trying to let you know what it is and that I'm excited about it. And then you can make a choice about it. In fact, even for this game, Expeditions, we're accepting pre-orders for it now, which is a little bit earlier than we usually do. And there aren't any reviews out about it yet. That's why we usually wait until the game is until production is complete. Production has just begun on the game now. And so usually then I can just share reviews. I can say, okay, here's what other people think about it. Yeah. And so right now I can really only share what I think about it. So I do look forward to, and so I've been telling people, if you want to wait until you have unbiased third-party reviews and get their opinions.
Yeah. But I mean, that must be weird to just have going. I mean, I take it the pre-orders are going quite well.
They have gone quite well. Yeah. I wouldn't say they're on like the big Kickstarter level of pre-orders. This is no Frosthaven by any means, but but yeah, Isaac. Yeah. But they're going well. Yeah, thousands of pre-orders of people who are curious to buy it based on fairly little information so far, which is neat to see.
That must be pretty cool.
Yeah,
that must be pretty cool.
Trust always feels good. Yeah.
If you want to get hold of pre-order, you go to stonemeiergames.com/games/expeditions, and you can find it kind of there, which is and you can read. There's a couple of videos on here. There's a breakdown. You can kind of look at the rule. You can look at the rule book as well, which I'm always kind of interested in, because I see, and you've got the comments section, and I'm always interested in the comments section because you seem to answer as many comments as possible. You're not one of these people who kind of like shake the comment can and then kind of you actually kind of go in and actively done that. Have you been able to use that as a kind of a feedback gathering exercise as well? Is there some interesting points being raised in the comments about what people feel about the rules and stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, usually I don't release this level of information about a game until we've already made it. And so in this case, I revealed it at a time when the rule book, like, we're in production, but the rule book itself isn't printed until a little bit later in production. It's one of the easier things to print.
Yeah.
And so we still have time to make changes. And I'm really glad we did, because there were some great comments mostly about clarity in the rule book. There were also the odd people saying like, oh, couldn't you just make it a cooperative game instead of a competitive game? And I'm like, no, like we're in production now. We're not going to completely change the game at this point. You're maybe a little bit too used to Kickstarter at this point.
Yeah, you'd be amazed. Yeah, but then again, you're absolutely right, because there are people that will look at Kickstarter comments and have made a comment in Kickstarter only to have the designer developer kind of go, yeah, we can include that. We'd have to do a stretch goal, but we could include that. And I've actually seen kind of people go, have you thought about doing this instead? And it's like, damn, that's a really good eye-opening kind of idea. I'm conscious of time. I'm conscious you've got a hungry cat, and we don't want to turn him into a hangry cat.
He's off camera now, just glaring at me.
Paddington Bear stare. What's the cat's name?
That's Biddy. He is my 16-year-old cat.
Wow.
He knows that I will listen to his demands. And
if not, there'll be threats in the night, and something interesting in the cereal box the next kind of morning. If people want to keep an eye on what you're up to on the internet webs, where can they find you on the internet webs?
The main hub for things is stonemeiergames.com. That's where you can find all the little, the blog. The YouTube channel is the place to go if you want to see like some of the videos that I'm making for Expeditions or videos about other games. I mostly talk about other games on the YouTube channel. And Instagram is probably Facebook and Instagram. I'm active on them in different ways.
Yeah.
Facebook has our game specific groups,
Yes.
and Instagram is another place where I just like to talk about a variety of games. Are you on Instagram? I
think I follow you on Instagram.
Yeah. Let me make sure that I follow. I'm guessing I do. Is it We're Not Wizards on?
It is, yeah. Jamey's
I do follow you. Okay, good.
He's frantically checking Instagram. It's almost like he's panicking. It's like, nothing's gonna you're not gonna get the Instagram police to look for you. Go. Mr. Stegmaier, notice you're not following We're Not Wizards on Instagram. I wish I could do that with some people though. Just get knocked at the door. Why aren't you following me? Notice me. As normal.
You have a nice photo of toast here that looks really good. You make a good toast.
I do.
This is from 8 weeks ago. You probably won't remember this toast, but
it was probably nice amazing. Photo. I mean, I've expanded my toast recipe. I am now doing Nutella chocolate spread with a crushed banana on top. Yeah,
that sounds delicious.
It is amazing. It's just the perfect. Like, as I say, we'll put all the notes, the links in the notes, so in the show notes, so we've got notes to show. And then I'll learn to talk properly. If you want to keep an eye on what we're up to, just search for We're Not Wizards. You'll find us in all the different wonderful, fantastic places. We are on Instagram, so follow us if you want. But we're also got our podcast, we'renotwizards.com. We've got our blog, which is we'renotwizards.co.uk and we'renotwizards.tabletop.com as well. You can find us there too. If you like what you listen to, please subscribe. If you like us very, very much, drop us a rating or a review on your podcast catcher of choice. Remember, if you get the choice, don't give us 10 stars because it makes us just a little bit big-headed, but don't give us 1 star because it makes us cry. Give us something in the middle, like a 5, because it's average, and we're just a little bit average. But the person who's not been average is the rather wonderful, the rather fantastic, the non-dancing, non-singing game marvel that is Mr. Jamey Stegmaier.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah.
You're very, very welcome indeed. And if you're lucky, if you're kind, if you're polite, he might just take you on one of his little expeditions. But until the next time, bye.
Bye.
A wizard is never late. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.